Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome to Dynasty Drip. Stoked to get Andy back on the channel. Obviously, if any of you guys watched our in-season content, Andy is our Flex Friday expert, Flex Friday buddy that joins us all the time. But we got him on the channel to talk about some undervalued Dynasty players. So, Andy, thanks for joining in, man. Nice to see your face again.
Dude, thanks for having me. It's good to be back. It's fun watching some NFL playoffs. Wish my Packers were still in it, but still some fun football being played.
So basically what we're going to do today is I'm going to use some industry rankings. I'm going with draftsharks.com. Wouldn't say like I personally use these just like I super depend on them, but I know they're a very common and popular dynasty ranking site. And also I think it's good to shop your ranks around in a way, kind of see what different sites value different players. So according to their rankings, I pulled some guys that I think are pretty good value. And we're basically going to have Andy comment on if he agrees, disagrees. He did not tell me if he liked or hated them, and he doesn't need to agree. I think it's more, I like some of these guys in the ranges, and then some of them are a little more on the edge. And it's like, I want like either you to confirm if I'm crazy or be like, nah, that's actually pretty accurate. But we're going to go by position. Everything's going to be timestamped for you guys. So if you don't want to know about the RBs and you're only interested in the wide receivers, feel free to click through to the wide receiver section. And then we're going to do some trades, live trades kind of intermixed as well. So first guy I want to talk about, and I couldn't leave this guy off the list being a Titans fan. They have him in tier 3 here, and that's going to be Cam Ward. Now, for me, I think what I like about Cam Ward's ranking here is that I do personally think I'd have him slightly higher. I'm not saying I'm going to have him all the way up at like QB 8 in this, Trevor Lawrence, Herbert, wherever, Caleb range. But I see a version where I do think Cam Ward, I think, could be easily in this top of tier 3 by the end of next year. And that's why I kind of think he might be an undervalued guy to go target this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I see there's definitely a case for him to be up there. I mean, obviously this year, not a great performance as a quarterback 41, but you look at the Titans and it's like he had the worst supporting cast to work with, not a great head coach, 0 weapons, bad O-line. So it's like you can't expect him to do good, but I thought he definitely showed improvement throughout the season. See, for me, this is probably about like where I would have him too. I think if I was in like a full rebuild, I'd probably want to take the chance on him over like a Baker Mayfield or a Dak. But I think, if I have a pretty decent team, I think I'd rather just take the security of those guys who can all still have really good seasons, but, just might not have the longevity of the career because there are still questions about Cam Ward. I feel like his rookie season, we saw him play fairly well. We also saw some not as great things, but tough to put all the blame on him when the Titans were so bad. So it's still kind of up in the air as to like what he is going to be.
Yeah, and 100%. I mean, as we all know, anyone who's played Dynasty for, a couple years up to, we're at like almost 10 years of playing Dynasty, team context matters. And for example, if I'm trying to win next year, Dak Prescott over Cam Ward every single day. If I'm retooling, probably more value in Cam Ward if you're playing the game a little more like a stock market. Because Dak's not going up from here, even if he's going to stick around as a valuable asset. So that's the only quarterback that I had on my undervalued list. I do think there's some value in some guys I've mentioned before. So if you haven't caught any of my previous videos, I do think here, and I didn't tell this one to Andy, but dude, Kyler Murray is, to me, a screaming buy if this is where he's being priced. I think what's hard about Kyler Murray is that I think everyone's going to rank him here, but then I have a feeling if you go to try trade for him at this value, they're going to be like, no, dude, Kyler Murray's top 10, bro. You're not. And I think you might run into that roadblock personally, but
yeah,
I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Kyler?
I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he's, either let go, if he's starting for the Cardinals next year, if he gets traded, if he's playing on another team. I think he also carries some risk with him too. But I think it's also worth it because even if he's not an amazing real life quarterback, his ability to scramble, he can be a really good fantasy quarterback.
100%. So the next guys I want to talk about, and when it comes to some of these running backs, I tried not to go in the upper echelon and argue some of these tiers. like, Keyshawn Judkins, I think he could be higher for sure. I don't think I'm crazy there. But I wanted to scroll down a bit and talk about some people that, according at least to Draft Sharks, I think are crazy undervalued. And the fact that I even had to keep scrolling all the way here. Yeah. Wait, DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai back-to-back at RBs 32 and 33. I'm going to let you go first on this, Andy. Do you think this is accurate, inaccurate? Do you think this is a value? Where are you at with these two guys?
I think what's interesting here, too, is because I looked at these rankings, and then I also went over to Keep Trade Cut, which I think a lot of Dynasty players use as like a market analysis, and their values are totally different. Like Monangai is up at RB 22 over there instead of 33 down here. Swift is a few spots higher. And, it's interesting because Swift finished running back 14, looked good. And then Monangai looked good when Swift was out and he had to come in. It'll be interesting to see what Chicago's backfield is next year. I still think they're going to keep Swift, but he does have a cap hit of $9 million. They can save $8 million of that if they were to cut him in the offseason and make Monangai. But I think he played well enough, and it's not like a crazy high. He's not a cap hit of like $15 million. So I think he sticks around, which, and if it's still a 1-2, there's definitely still value in having Swift, especially on a contending team. And then Monangai, if he does get the opportunity, he's looked good enough where I think I would take him over Jalen Warren and Blake Corum. I think both of these guys, I would move up a little bit. I don't know if I'd go all the way up to like where Keep Trade Cut has him, which is, I think, about where I'd put Monangai if like Swift were to go to another team. But I definitely think that this is a little low for just like the possibility and I think the talent of the players on a good offense.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it is going to depend on if they add someone and how scared you are. I mean, I moved off Swift last year. I was scared they were going to draft someone and they didn't. And part of me wishes I held on a little bit longer because I could have gotten a pretty good season out of him. But like you said, like, I don't think they should be up here in the Kyron Williams, Cam Scadaboo. Like, they should not be up here. But it's crazy to me that according to these rankings, if you have someone going off these, there's no way that Woody Marks, Spatial Tootin, Zach Charbonnet, Trey Benson. Like, dude, I think you could make a pretty easy argument to take both of these running backs over all of those names.
Yeah.
But I can see
like that.
Some of these are fine. I think Henry is a hard one to value, as always. Javonte, same.
Yeah. But I think they belong in that tier at least, though. I don't think they're in a separate tier from those other guys.
So I'm going to read off some trades here for DeAndre Swift over from Dynasty Data Labs. If any of you guys are watching this video, Dynasty Data Labs is a super fun like Dynasty site where they basically just pull a lot of aggregate info from sleeper Dynasty leagues and post it. There's a lot of free shares here. So I'm pulling up DeAndre Swift trades from the last month just to kind of get a better idea on some of the values. Now, at times, what can be hard to use examples from Dynasty Data Labs is that some of the trades are like massive packages on both sides. So that can be a little confusing. One right here that's sticking out to me that I think is pretty like clean is DeAndre Swift or a 2026 second. Which side do you like there?
I mean, I think if it is a early second, I might like the second. But if it's like a late second, I think I'd absolutely rather have Swift. The middle, it gets a little close. If I'm on a competing team, I'll take Swift. If I'm on a rebuilding, I might take the second. But yeah.
There are some interesting trades, though, when you start looking through here. 2028 first for DeAndre Swift. That was from January 17th. I don't know who's trading future first for not backup, but like committee backs January 17th.
Older
hats off to you. Like I'd be careful about making that kind of trade.
I think I'd take first in that situation.
Yeah, I agree on that one. I'm going to type in Monangai here because I'm curious if like the Monangai trades seem a little more like easy to maybe target, but also like he's younger, so it can be really hard on any given team. Right here, Blake Corum and Jalen Royals. He's basically a toss-in from the Chiefs, obviously, for Monangai. Do you think you would take Monangai over Blake Corum, kind of both coming off their late season emergence or whatever you want to call it?
I think I probably would. Kyron signed is going to be in LA longer, as far as we can tell. I know he just, restructured his contract or signed a new contract extension. And I think Kyren is, a lot of people saying like, oh, he's not that good of a running back. I think he is a pretty good running back. I think he's proven it. And so I think Blake Corum will factor in, but I don't think he's going to take over Kyren Williams' job as long as Kyren is still there, where there is more of a chance for Monangai. There's also a lot more of a chance that, Swift is, I think for sure he's gone after this year. I don't know if he gets re-signed, but there's also a chance that, he could be cut to make cap space. The Bears are negative in the cap space. They're going to have to make some moves. I personally think Swift stays, but there's always a chance he doesn't. So I think I would go Monangai there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think with Monangai, it's like Kyren is going to be the better back in LA. Like, he's just a better player than Corum is. And I'm not saying Swift isn't necessarily better than Monangai, but I do think Monangai probably fits like Ben Johnson a little more. Whereas like Swift, like you said, like we'll see. Like if they draft someone, like I think it would be more to replace Swift than Monangai. Like Monangai is like kind of that heavy hitter kind of vibe that he wants to go with. So another guy I wanted to talk about here, and he's even lower on this list, which I guess is fair because like he's kind of a tough guy to value in Dynasty, but that's going to be Rhamondre Stevenson down here at RB 36 on Draft Sharks. Now, keep in mind too, Draft Sharks, the way these rankings are working, they do have some of these rookies already inputted, Jonah Coleman from Washington, Jadarian Price. So they have some of the rookies already bumping some of these guys down. So to me, I think it's a lot more relevant to be placing the names like within the tiers of names around him. So Rhamondre Stevenson in the Tennessee RBs, Tyrone Tracy, Kenneth Gainwell, these guys must love Braylon Allen, Blake Corum again, Jalen Warren, and with the Chicago backs in this tier. How do you feel about Rhamondre Stevenson, and has this playoffs like maybe changed your mind a little bit about him?
I mean, I think it's probably about right for where I would put him. Looking also at his cap numbers too, which is always interesting for running backs. I feel like they're a lot of times the biggest casualties. He's definitely not getting cut this year. They lose more dead cap than they have to pay him this year. So he's going to be on the team next year. But I think, we've got to assume that, Henderson's going to be taking that lead eventually, just being the player that he is. So I wouldn't be going out of my way to trade for Rhamondre unless it's as like a depth piece on a competing team, because I'm not sure how many more years he's going to have fantasy relevance.
I think he's probably tough to trade for just because like you don't have enough information. What I would say is like, I definitely don't think he's going anywhere for the next year or two. Like you said, with his contract,
for sure,
like he's looked good. He's playing the role they want him to play. Yeah. They have enough money because they're not paying Travion. Like they're going to invest in I don't know. There's all these things where it's like, he's been playing pretty well. And so I think for me, it's like, I'm probably not investing like draft picks in Rhamondre Stevenson, like rookie draft picks. But like, if you can swap some of the guys in this tier for Rhamondre Stevenson, like if you can swap, as much as I like Tajay Spears, you'd have a hard argument convincing me that Tajay Spears is like better than Rhamondre Stevenson, like just as a player. Braylon Allen, that's crazy. Just throw him out. That doesn't even sound realistic. I think Jalen Warren deserves to be in front of him, just maybe on like merit alone, but like I think they're pretty similar. I think that's a pretty fair ranking. I probably would take both Chicago guys over him. I wonder trade-wise here, if we type in Stevenson, I'm going to take a peek here, like what he was valued. And the reason I'm doing only from the last month is I'm trying to get away from some of these like late season fantasy pushes, which I think could maybe have some like flawed trades, because I could see some stuff going down in like early December. That, like I think this one's really interesting. And I think this could potentially speak to there being Stevenson value. Romeo Dobbs for Rhamondre Stevenson and Jerry Jeudy. Like,
I think I'd probably take the Stevenson Jeudy side. there.
And here's Stevenson in a third for a second. Like,
yeah.
Stevenson in a second for Spears in a second. I literally nailed that one.
Yeah. Interesting to see who would be getting the earlier second in that situation. How those guys.
This one was 26 second for a 27 second, and Stevenson was with the 26 second. So it almost seems like they're valuing. Here's another Stevenson in a third for a second.
Yeah.
I like this one. Stevenson and a first and a second and 27 for a 26 first. Don't know, we don't have the exact pick numbers for those trades. But it's good to keep in mind. So we're going to move over to some wide receivers. In general, it's fun to talk about running backs, and the way you play your RB room in the offseason is incredibly important in Dynasty. But in general, like, the move is kind of to trade your running backs unless you have like a top 8 one. And it's usually the smart move here. So we're going to start talking about some wide receivers, which I think is a little better on how you can maybe build your team like for the future and maybe invest in some guys that could potentially be undervalued. And I personally do, coming off this season that he just had, he's only 25. I think Chris Olave is a little undervalued here even at wide receiver 14, as high as that is. Am I crazy to say that?
I mean, for me, would you take him over those guys who are right above him there? Like, straight up?
I think maybe what it is, and look, this could just be like being nitpicky, but if you're going to have tiers, I think you have to respect them as a separate tier. And I think Chris Olave should be in the tier above him.
In this tier. I can get on board with that argument. I mean, he literally won me a Dynasty championship this year. Yeah, I regretted trading for him, and then he just came alive near the end of the season and bailed me out week 16.
Like, I love T. Higgins. I love Vlad McConkey. I love Garrett Wilson. Honestly, I love everyone else on this screen. But, like, Olave balled out more. The only one that would have maybe finished higher, like, did technically Zay Flowers, because of his week 18 performance, finish higher? Maybe, but like week 18 doesn't count. So like Olave was the better receiver to Flowers by a long shot.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I definitely like him. And I think it depends what you are trading for Olave, because he had such a massive swing. Like, I went back on like Keep Trade Cut and looked before the season started. He was ranked at wide receiver 34. And now he's all the way up. He's either 14 or 15 on that site too. And so that's a 20-point swing from like a low-end wide receiver 3 to like borderline wide receiver 1. I think it's huge. And if some people are still, valuing him a little bit lower, then I think he's definitely a trade for candidate. The one thing that is a little concerning is all of the concussions. Hopefully that doesn't become a factor, because he looks so good. He's in his prime. He's, going to be turning 26 this offseason. He has chemistry in that offense. I don't hate trading for him. I also get a little concerned as long as you can get, really good value for him. But I agree. Like, with him on my team, I don't think if somebody offered me T. Higgins for him straight up, I think I would say no. So
would you take, I think an interesting one, depending on the build of your team, would be, what about Emeka Egbuka? Would you take him for Olave and just hope that it flip-flops moving forward?
Yeah, I think if, with that team obviously coming off a championship, I think I would still keep Olave. But if I was a team that, didn't really think I had a chance at winning, I was trying to retool and get younger, then I think I probably would be okay with trading Olave for Egbuka. But I think that's very like team specific.
Mm-hmm. And two, I think part of this for me looking at some of these rankings was some of these I felt were like pretty far off, in the sense that like, use it as a buy low opportunity if this is where people in your league are valuing them, a la Swift and Monangai. Like, if they're being valued as RB 32, go trade for them if you're getting that price.
Yeah.
I think Olave is more of like, I don't know how much higher I would have him, but in a Dynasty startup, like if he's going in this range, I think that's a great value. And maybe Olave is more of just a great value player instead of like a screaming deal kind of guy.
Yeah.
So the next guys I want to talk about, and this whole tier is crazy to me, honestly. Like, I don't know if they're just, I think it's because they put all these rookies in. But just to go down this list, the first guys that popped out were these two Chicago wide receivers. Once again, going back to Chicago in Luther Burden and Rome Odunze down here at wide receiver 29 and wide receiver 30 on Draft Sharks. And then we can get some other guys in this tier as well.
Yeah,
but
a lot of people
this tier is crazy. This tier is absolutely crazy. But where have you kind of landed on the Chicago wide receivers, let's say, moving into the offseason?
Yeah.
And we can kind of discuss from there.
I think them being this low is a little crazy. And especially here, Rome Odunze being below Luther Burden. Like, I get Luther Burden had a couple great games, made some big plays. He looks good. But, like, Rome Odunze started the year, I feel like he was, after 4 weeks, people were talking about him being like a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. And then he got hurt and played through injury and then was hurt for like 4 or 5 games at the end of the year. I mean, I have zero love for the Bears, obviously Packer fan, but there's no denying that Caleb Williams is a good quarterback with huge talent already in year 2. Like, there's a good chance that he even improves. So having his, especially Odunze, his projected number 1 weapon, top 10 overall pick, who's shown that he can be really good. I don't know if you would count all the injury games as like, oh, he had massive regression when he did, but like, you've got to explore the other factors with that. And so I think wide receiver 30, if you can get him for, the price there, like, I would be more than happy to take that chance, because next year we could be having a conversation about him being, a top 10, top 8 dynasty wide receiver. So
I think it's just an overcorrection. I think top 5, top 8, whatever, like, way too high. So yes. 30 is crazy low, especially when you look at like some of these names over him. Like, I'm sorry, Jameson Williams. Who's taking Jameson Williams? Like,
even I think I would take him over Devonta.
I would take him over Devonta because of age. And then I think this is kind of the tier. This is where I would put him with Zay Flowers and a couple of these rookies, T. Higgins, Ladd McConkey. Like, I think this is probably, once he's not hurt, like you pointed out, like this is kind of where he should be. And then I think Luther Burden, look, I'm with you. I would go Odunze over Burden. I definitely think Burden is like, I don't have any shares because you kind of had to have early seconds last year to accumulate a Luther Burden share. And so I don't personally have any. I mean, I'd love to have one because I think he is going to be a very divisive player. Mm-hmm. And I do see a version of the Dynasty offseason. And I'm not saying it's going to be wrong because, look, for all we know, Luther Burden is going to be the best offensive player on that team because he could be potentially. But I wouldn't be surprised to see if there's like this little game in Dynasty startups this year that's who can pick Luther Burden the highest. Because it gives that kind of vibe to me that he's going to slowly like creep up. And all of a sudden he's going to be going in like the 4th round of redraft next year. And you're going to be like, why?
This is crazy.
Like, why are we doing this? Like, I'm taking Chris Olave in the same range.
Yeah.
But it's tough. And I had him as someone else we were to discuss, and I'm just going to bring him up now because this just is Brian Thomas. This is crazy to me. Brian Thomas here at wide receiver 26. You want to talk about an overcorrection, and I'll put Marvin Harrison Jr. in there, but I do think Marvin Harrison deserves to be moved down more than Brian Thomas because Brian Thomas had 1 good year and 1 sketchy year, and Marvin kind of had 2 sketchy years. Now, I'm not losing faith. I'm not selling low on Marvin unless someone's like overpaying. But where are you kind of at with Brian Thomas Jr. and, kind of going over some of these names? What tier do you think he belongs in?
I think he definitely needs to be moved up for sure, at least 1 tier. I think around probably I'd have him a little below Olave, but I feel like they're fairly similar where, last year he was ranked wide receiver 5, dynasty consensus wise. And I was like, he should not be your wide receiver 5. He should be, sold. There's a lot of other guys I like more who are a lot less sketchy. Whereas, you have Travis Hunter coming in. We've only seen it for 1 year, but now this is like, that was an overcorrection for him getting that high. This is, I think, an overcorrection for him going way too low. So yeah, I am fine. Like right now on, I think keep trade cut, it's like a mid first for Brian Thomas. I think that is a fine buy. If you can trade like the 106 or 107 for him, I'd be more than happy to do it, whether I'm rebuilding or have a competing team. So yeah, I think he's definitely a buy.
Yeah, and I'm looking here. I pulled up some trades for Odunze. I mean, some of these, yes, are valuing him a little high, but I think there might be some value here. So anyone watching this, like, I might reach out to the Odunze owner. We got Odunze for Waddle in a third, Odunze in a third for Devonta Smith in a second. I mean,
yeah,
Odunze for Higgins, that's fair. I think that makes sense to me. I'm seeing a lot of Odunze for a 26 first, and we don't know what first it is. But like you said, I think I don't think I'm trading like 1-3 through 1-5 maybe for Odunze, but I think like 6 through 12, I think that'd be a pretty smart trade.
Oh yeah, I'd be 100% on board with that. I think pretty similar for like Brian Thomas Jr. as well.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to scroll down here to a guy. I did have this guy in a buy video. I just want to mention him again because I put him as a potential buy low, kind of undervalued guy going into the offseason. And dude, he was having a killer playoff game until he got hurt. Now, yes, he's gotten hurt a couple times, but are you kind of in this camp that Pat Bryant could maybe move up? But also, there's just so many good wide receivers that sometimes being undervalued is like, I don't really know if I'm taking him over these guys, but it's just so tough with wide receiver in Dynasty.
Yeah, it might just be he's a good value if you can get him about where he's ranked, because I think he does have a lot of potential to move up. I could see him being a wide receiver 2 next year. Next year's Mims last year in his rookie contract. I wouldn't be surprised if Pat Bryant is the 2 anyways. So yeah, I think it's worth the risk. It'd be interesting to see like what people are getting for him in trades. Like I wouldn't have a problem, for sure, especially looking at the guys under him. I feel like I would probably take him over all of those.
Yeah, guys. I think like the way I was speaking about it was, I don't know if I'm going to swap him in like a player deal because I like other guys in this tier, on this list. And I don't think Pat Bryant should be over Jacoby Myers. Like I don't think that. I think Pat Bryant and Jaden Reed is interesting, just with like Watson looking pretty good again. And then we get the one game out of Matthew Golden that I'm going to hold on to all offseason as the potential hope that he, and there's some other guys. I do think, like, as much as I like Trey Harris, I think that's a little high for Trey Harris personally.
Yeah.
But let's pull up some trades here for Pat Bryant just to see like if he is like a viable asset or if he, he's still holding some value. I think kind of looking at some of these trades. Oh my God. Sometimes you look at trades and you're like, this is just a crazy.
I like this one where it's definitely a mistype. It's Pat Bryant in a 2027 fourth for a 10-23 82nd. Let's go back. Medieval Dynasty.
Kamani Vidal and Rashid Shaheed for Pat Bryant. I mean, it's not, I like Rashid Shaheed, and I don't know if I'm doing this trade out of just pure love, but I think it speaks that he's affordable to buy if you want him. To me, I think he's just someone to monitor. I'm not saying I'm going to go overpay for this guy. I just see a version where when he's been healthy, he's been pretty involved and almost operated as the wide receiver 1 on this team in a loose fashion. So I think he's an interesting guy to keep an eye on. Another guy at value, I think, on that at value list I want to talk about is our boy, the cokehead, Jalen Coker down here at wide receiver 65. Like, yeah, there's a couple names in this tier I like, and most of them are at the upper echelon. I think Quentin Johnson's interesting, but there is no reason Jalen Coker should be like behind Adonai Mitchell, I don't think. And I'm not asking you about him yet because I've already talked about him too, but I'm going to put another thing in here for the guys back-to-back here, Parker Washington and Jalen Coker. I think these guys are really good values, whether it's Dynasty startup or if you can get them thrown into dynasty trades this offseason.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think I've got Coker higher than Washington personally. It's also interesting seeing their difference. Like right now, here they're 64 and 65. KTC, Coker's 50. Washington's all the way up at 43. And while Washington does look like a good player, I'm, I guess, a little tentative to trade a lot for him just because Jacoby Myers is signed to a 3 or 4 year deal. Brian Thomas is going to be there for another 2, if not 3 years. Obviously, Travis Hunter on that team. So I feel like unless there's injuries, like they've just invested so much into those other guys, it would be really hard for him to get on the field, even though he's played well. Like I think even if what's his name, Travis Hunter comes out and isn't playing great, just the fact that they traded so much and spent the second overall pick on him, he's going to have such a long leash before they're like, okay, we're going to have to like bench you and give more snaps to Parker Washington, which is the only thing that scares me, that, you know, it's tough for him to get on the field. But I think when he does, he's proven that he's good and can go in like your flex, your wide receiver 3 spot.
Yeah. And I think too, like it's tough. Whereas like the thing I like about Parker Washington is I think I'm trying in my head to at least focus that like maybe in 2 years, he's not in this situation, but he's a great player who could have a lot of like value if he kind of gets freed up. But it's a big hope. But I think for me, it's like, I think guys in this tier, for me, kind of like I was just kind of like insinuating, is like, maybe you don't do these like positional things where it's like, you don't have to necessarily like swap guys in this tier for each other. But I think like buying guys like Parker Washington, Jalen Coker, Pat Bryant, like I would much rather use my 3rd round picks and go acquire players like this because they have at least shown what you hope a 3rd round dynasty pick shows you, that they can be good. Like with the exception of like, unless you're just always assuming you're going to hit on Puka Nacua, like this is a best case scenario for a 3rd round pick in dynasty, that like they go out and have a 5-game stretch with 9 targets each. And that's what Parker Washington has done. Like he's had some good games.
Do you think there could be any value just because, you know, here at 64, love trading for him, but like KTC up at 43, for me, that's a little bit high. But in just waiting until next year, and like, obviously, if everybody on that offense is healthy, and if Parker Washington isn't used as much, I would assume then his value would drop a little bit, and then he'd be an even better buy. Obviously, you're taking a risk that that's the way it's going to play out. Nobody's going to get hurt. They're not going to try and work him in a little bit more, which is just how I would project it going. But, you know, if 6 games into the season, he's only had, 10 targets on the year or 12 targets on the year, then, you can get him for maybe even like a late 3rd or a 4th, and it's even a better deal because the player is still very talented. He's just in a terrible situation. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I would be wary at that rank. And I'm actually, while we transition to our next player, I want to pull up, I'm curious. I think it depends. I mean, wide receiver 48, it depends. I really think the thing in Dynasty is like wide receiver 32 is basically wide receiver 55. And I think that's the issue that can happen a lot. Yeah. But you are right. Like there's a version where you like Travis Hunter's not going to play cornerback at all next year. And then all of a sudden Parker Washington starts getting dropped. Like, or I don't know, like from teams. And then you're like, okay, I'll take Parker Washington. I think too, like to me, something that I think is a very undervalued technique in Dynasty that I need to get better about is when it comes to guys like Parker Washington's, Pat Bryant's, guys that are lower Jalen Coker's, is instead of trading an asset for them, like contemplate moving down in rounds to pick up this asset for free. Basically meaning like, like it sounds crazy. He's like, dude, of course, like as much as I like the guy, I'm not going to trade 211 for Parker Washington, even though I'm a really big fan. But would I trade 2-4 for 212 in Parker Washington? Yeah. Like maybe, and you could definitely get a trade like that on the clock because sometimes people really want to hop up.
Yeah,
And
these are guys that they really want.
Yeah. And as much as I like 2.4 over 212, analytically, like it's maybe like a 2% hit rate change. Like I don't really know how much more it would be. I think too, this is just guys to monitor. It doesn't mean they got to be bought this second.
Yeah.
But there's some guys I want to bring up. And so we're going to move into tight end, and tight ends, difficult as always. We got a big influx of tight ends this year. I think there's a very solid like top 6 maybe. And then I think some question marks start to get asked. So the first guy I want to talk about is someone that even I, as an owner of him in a league, am a little torn on. Rhamondre Gadsden. He's down here at tight end 10 on KTC, or not on KTC, on Draft Sharks. I'm just so used to saying KTC. But what's your take on Gadsden? Very tough. Like he had a stretch where if he continued it, he could have been tight end 4. And then he kind of disappeared at the end of the season. I'm giving him a pass on the beginning of a season because he's a rookie and he really hadn't even worked into the offense yet.
Yeah, I mean, and that is, I think, part of it too, is he's a rookie, and it's great that he's shown that he is super athletic and can have big games, because that's not true of all tight ends, and he did it for a 4-game stretch. So yeah, it's not ideal that it went away a little bit, but I feel like you would not be able to trade for him if he finished the season like he was in that stretch. He'd be way, way up high. And I think he flashed enough that I'm definitely willing to take a shot on him. Being a young tight end in an offense that I believe in, it'd be interesting to see like how much longer Keenan Allen is there and is, part of the offense. So yeah, I'm more than happy to go after Gadsden. Like I wouldn't, like he's what, right behind Kyle Pitts. It's like I'd be willing to take the chance on Gadsden over Pitts.
I think too, for me, like he was very attractive in this tier. Like I love Dalton Kincaid, but I mean, at this point, man, it's hard to argue that a 22-year-old who has flashed just as much as Kincaid has, who's 4 years older, and we've seen it over and over and over, that Kincaid will have like 2 good games and then have long stretches where he's not involved. And I think too, like, I think there are some, maybe I'm connecting some dots that aren't there, but like, as soon as like Alt went down, Gadsden kind of went down in production, like maybe he was blocking a little more. And also just the whole Chargers offense, like they were playing without 2 all-pro offensive linemen. And, I wrote this guy down before the news was announced, but I think you got to be stoked that our boy Mike McDaniel is going to the Chargers. Like that is awesome news just in general. And especially I think for the pass catchers, I think it'll be good for the running game, obviously, because it's not bad for the running game. We'll see like how much Hampton mimics Achane. They're not the same player. I think it's just good for the offense. They're going to score more points, which will be good for everyone. Oh yeah.
He'll find ways to use, Omari and Hampton and Gadsden because he is such a great physical matchup. So yeah, no, I'm very much for it.
And then another one I wanted to talk about at tight end, and this is one of the ones that I was more just curious, like what your thought on Theo Johnson is. And I'm not saying he's over or undervalued. Mm-hmm. I think he could maybe be both, where it's like in general, he might be undervalued, but there's names below him that I think he shouldn't be above. And I think those are both true.
Yeah. And it's also interesting too, with obviously the Neighbors injury and, just the makeup of that offense. Like, are they going to bring in another wide receiver either in the draft or in free agency? And like, was his production part of a result of, hey, we don't have that many people to go to? Or is it like, oh, he is a good tight end? And I think he's decent. So I think at that range, depending on what you're trading for him, I'd be willing to take a shot. But I think like, I'm not trying to like trade, like over commit to getting Theo Johnson on my team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think to me, he's more of a startup target than a trade target. I think like because of I think him and Gadsden is like the better version of what Johnson is, not player wise, but they both have upward mobility, which I think is something you look for if you're not targeting like top 12 at any given position. Is who are guys that like could actually, if they hit, impact my team. Which is why, like, to go back to what I talked about, it's the one thing I think I'm holding on to with Parker Washington is that when it was good, it was good. And I think a lot of guys, it just never even gets that good. As much as I like some guys, like I love Rashid Shaheed. You love Rashid Shaheed.
Oh, he's our boy.
The best version of Rashid Shaheed never matched what Parker Washington did in a 8-game sample.
Yeah.
And that is what you need to like win. It's awesome to have like, you know, bye-week fill-in players and fun Flex Friday guys and that sort of stuff. But in the end, we're looking for like difference makers.
And
while we're in this tier 2, do you think this is too high for Mason Taylor? Or is it just that I'm looking at Kittle and Strange right below him, and I just feel like those guys are too low?
See, for me, like Kittle is tough because tearing his Achilles, like I would be terrified. Like I don't think Kittle's going to, for sure, he's not going to start the year next year. I'd be surprised if he plays at all next year. And then he's coming back 33 off an Achilles. Like
it's tough.
Never be the same player. And then you're just getting, you know, probably even if he plays for another 2 years, it's just another 2 years of an older tight end off a major injury who's probably not going to be the same explosive guy he was. I hope he comes back, and I'm totally wrong because I love watching him play football. But for me, I would be trying to trade away George Kittle if you can get like that price for him. Like I think I would, if I could even trade him for
if you could swap within tight ends.
Yeah, I totally would.
So the next guy I want to talk about, and I honestly only put this one on the list because like I scrolled so far until I saw this guy's name. And I'm not saying he's exciting. I think he's probably honestly one of the least exciting players on the planet to own.
Yeah.
But Dalton Schultz should not be below Travis Kelce, who is probably going to retire. He should not be below Cade Otton. Like, he should not be below Michael Mayer. I don't love the guy, but he is an awesome tight end 2 for your dynasty team. And that's how I'm going to phrase it.
Yeah. I think he definitely doesn't have a lot of ceiling. And, you know, looking at his contract, he's got one more year on the Texans, and then we'll see what they do. But, you know, as a depth piece, I think 36 is definitely too low. Like, because I feel like you can trade, you know, like a third or something for him where.
Dude, you might be able to get him for a 4th, bro. Like, and I don't really even know. I think just looking at tight end, I think, like, if I was in a startup and I was using these rankings as ADP, let's just call it that, I totally think the strategy I would go with would be is I would get like a Gadsden or something like that in this tier. And then I would just get a couple like absolute darts. We're going to talk about him next. And then I'd snag Dalton Schultz in the 22nd round to be like, if it all fails, I have tight end 14. I have tight end 14 on my team. So I just wanted to mention him. Like, I felt it was a little disrespectful. Like, I understand Dalton Schultz isn't that exciting, but he has some spike weeks, especially in like tight end premium leagues. Like, he puts out some stats. But to finish the show today, I want to talk about 2 of my favorite startup kind of guys to go get. And I think these guys have like the most dart throw upward mobility of any tight end kind of at their ranking. And the first one I want to talk about, someone that I'm sure I could and will be asking you about all summer, and it will be to no avail. I want to talk about Terrance Ferguson because look, there are no guarantees with this, and I think that's what's hard. They have him here at tight end 24 on Draft Sharks. I think he should be higher personally. Like, I like Arroyo, but I kind of think like that's almost the slot I would have Ferguson in. But talk to me about some pluses for him and why like he might be an undervalued guy to go get this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, he, as a rookie, usually don't expect a lot from rookie tight ends, and he really didn't do a ton, except for at the end of the season. Devontae Adams goes down. They had him out there running routes. He looked good. Um, let's see. They've got Parkinson right now, but they can save $7 million if he's cut. So wouldn't be surprised if he sticks around. Also wouldn't be surprised if he's cut. And Fergie 3.0 gets the majority of snaps in that offense as tight end. He's athletic. They spent a 3rd round pick on him. And obviously the Rams offense is a really good offense. And if he gets that role where he's out there for the majority of snaps, that is going to be really good for your fantasy team, especially him being so young. So I think where he is, I'd much rather take the chance on him than getting, some of these other guys like Juwan Johnson, who played good this year, but we'll see what the future holds in that offense. Obviously, he's a lot older. Even Goddard had some good games, but I would rather take that upside versus than having a guy who's okay, we know what they are at this point. Whereas Ferguson could definitely move quite a bit higher.
Yeah, and that's how I'm viewing him. Is I'm not going into the season being like Terrance Ferguson's going to be my starter, bro. This guy's going to win me my league this year. But he's a great guy that you could get him fairly late in a startup. I mean, he might start to pick up a little sexiness this offseason. I wouldn't be surprised. But if he hits and if he does turn out to be some elite asset, he immediately goes to tight end 10. He immediately goes all the way up here. All he needs is a 5-game stretch like Gadsden, and he'll be tight end 11. It could happen. Now, Parkinson is interesting. He played really well, and so I think that is kind of the thing that makes me a little nervous. That why would they cut him? He played really well this year. Got a lot of touchdowns
this year. Yeah, but
they ran so many tight ends out there. So
yeah.
And then the last guy to finish this video off of. Just kind of a forgotten name, and we're going to see if he fulfills the Zach Ertz replacing Zach Ertz kind of, thing that keeps happening. Dallas Goedert did it. I want to talk about Ben Sinnott down here at tight end 41. Once going in the 2nd round of Dynasty drafts 2 years ago, but he was replaced by Zach Ertz. But Zach Ertz basically killed his knee. If anyone watched that hit, it was not good. What are we thinking about Sinnott? Is he someone that should be a target? I think he's a good toss-in kind of player if you can get him added on to trades and you're looking for depth. Round 24 of a startup, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about him. You wish you would have seen a little bit more after Ertz went down. I mean, granted, it's Marcus Mariota, and that Commanders team was just kind of falling apart at that point of the season anyways. So not putting too much stock into that, but still would have wished for a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, if he's a throw-in, if you're getting him super cheap, if somebody's taking a 4th for him, I think it's worth the shot. Even if he just, is the guy next year, just having a starting tight end, I think is worth that. Somebody that you can play and just hope, even if he never lives up to the potential that people were drafting him at a couple years ago. So, even a late 3rd, I'd be happy with.
Yeah, tight end's just tough, man. I think I have always valued tight end when it comes to Dynasty because I like rostering those late end tight ends because if they end up starting, you can move them off your team a lot easier than you can move wide receiver 4s because if they hit, they become a starter for another team. Whereas sometimes I will never stop going for late wide receivers because it's too fun. But it's really difficult to have a bunch of Parker Washingtons and Chimere DKs on your team because you can't cut them. You don't want to trade them in case they blow up. They're not valued enough to get a fur, and they're very hard.
You can't start them every week, so
you can't start them, and it's very
purgatory.
But that's going to wrap up our undervalued kind of thing. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I tried to throw out a bunch of names here, just kind of have a lot of conversations. So I want to thank Andy for putting up with me on the undervalued players. And I mean, this list could be massive. I mean, and this list could have gone totally different if we'd used a different site's rankings. It's why people who use trade calcs so committed that they have to be right is so silly because I could link you to a site that hates your player. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just okay, but let's not pretend that everyone knows
What's the most important is like where you value that player and where your opponent values that player. And if you can find where you guys are different, then you can usually make a deal happen.
100%. But thank you guys for coming to Dynasty Drip. If you have any questions about any of the players we talked about, make sure to hit subscribe, turn your notifications on, like the video, drop their name, ask any questions in the comment. We're going to get out of here. Long video. Feel free to put it on 2x speed. But you're at the end of the video. So at that point, this advice is not going to help you. You don't need it 2 times the last.
Cheers for you.
Cheers for you. We appreciate you guys for coming, and we'll catch you next time.